Hey, Steve Bannon joining us now. Steve Bannon, the campaign chairman for the Trump campaign, engineering the big victory, the upset victory of the century, maybe of the ages, maybe ever, for Trump over Hillary Clinton. Steve Bannon serving as senior policy advisor for and a senior strategist for the president in the Trump administration for a period of time. And now, Steve, on the outside, he is running Citizens for the American Republic. Citizens for the American Republic. This is a C4. He's also got a great movie out called Trump at War. Just go to trumpatwar.com, trumpatwar.com. And you can also follow him at Twitter at Citizens AR. And he's with us now. Steve Bannon, great to have you with us, man.
John, thanks for having me on this morning.
Steve Bannon, not only were you the architect, the chairman of the Trump victory, but you really understand the Trump voter like me more than anybody ever. I always tell this story that you had a piece that is pinned to my Facebook page on the first page there on the why Trump won and coming out of the financial crisis of 2008, how it affected people like me. I read that every Monday, as I did today, just to remind me of why I'm here and why I do what I do every day, because it's a very motivating piece. Everybody should read that. Steve, we got a lot to talk about. I know you've only got 20 minutes with us. I want to start with Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, all of a sudden, running to the top of the polls. CNN's got him up by 15. Now the new darling. But there's some China issues going on that the legacy lying Main Street media isn't telling us about. What are they?
Well, first off, President Trump is president of the United States because working class people and middle class people were tired of this kind of managed decline of the American elites. The Hillary Clinton, Wall Street, corporatist, what I call party of Davos, this managed decline of the United States, which is really, you see it principally or at the highest level in the upper Midwest in our manufacturing belt, the great manufacturing industrial base that drove America to become a world power. And the decline of that is exactly why the United States was starting to decline in the world. And working class people rejected that. Donald Trump offered a return to American greatness, and principally about protecting American workers and also returning manufacturing jobs to the United States. That's why today I think is one of the most important days of Trump's presidency, not regarding the Russia hoax or all this nonsense about the Mueller investigation and all that, but what is central to the beating heart of this competition in the 21st century, and that is this economic war that China has been running against the United States for 20, 25 years. This is not the Chinese people. The Chinese people is decent and hardworking as any people on earth. This is this radical cadre of the Chinese Communist Party, President Xi, Wang Qishan, and others, these radicals that are determined to basically destroy the United States as a major industrial power. And this war has been going on for 20, 25 years. It's been supported by the corporatists in this country and throughout the world, and also Wall Street, the big investment banks, the big commercial banks, the big hedge funds. And Joe Biden, to say the other day, in the middle of this intense negotiation, we'll talk about what President Trump's done in the last 48 hours, which is quite historic. In the middle of this negotiation, Joe Biden says last week, China's not a competitor to us. This almost, I think, virtually disqualifies him to be a serious candidate for president of the United States. And I would hope that the populists in the Democratic Party, the people that follow Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, would finally engage him and take him to task. I mean, he is nothing more than a representative of kind of the Obama, Clinton, globalist clique. And you see this. He's got tremendous conflicts of interest when it comes to China. We did at Government Accountability, which is a organization I chaired and kind of oversaw for years while I was also at Breitbart with Peter Schweitzer. We did Clinton Cash. It took us years to do that research that came about in Clinton Cash. Clinton Cash was one of the instruments we bludgeoned Hillary Clinton with about her corruption, right, and her incompetence, but particularly her corruption with the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative. After that book came out, right before its publication, we shifted to a new topic, and that was China's influence peddling among American political elite. And one of the people we focus on was Joe Biden. And the reason was that Joe Biden in 2013 led an official delegation over to China to basically cave on a whole series of issues with the Chinese. And he took his son, Hunter, with him. Shortly thereafter, they announced, Hunter announced, and his partner, who was the son of Teresa Heinz, John Kerry's stepson, announced that they formed a private equity firm with a $1.5 billion investment by the Bank of China. Now, the Bank of China directly reports to the Chinese Communist Party and to the president of China. Unlike any other central bank in the G20, it reports directly to the political apparatus. It's not like the Federal Reserve. It's not like the Bank of England. It's not like the Bank of Tokyo. This reports directly to the political apparatus. So essentially, the senior members of the Chinese Communist Party funded Biden's son, who, by the way, has no background, is completely incompetent, and has absolutely zero chance of raising that type of money in either Wall Street or the City of London. They basically infused him first with $1 billion and then added another $500 million for a total investment of $1.5 billion. And Peter Schweitzer details this quite substantially in this book, Secret Empires. And Biden has got to come clean. Joe Biden has to come clean with how much money his family's made off the Chinese Communist Party, what's his involvement. And I think they're looking at this facial technology and this artificial intelligence, which enslaves the Chinese people. The Chinese people are enslaved by this firewall. They're enslaved by this technology. I believe when you look at the investments that Hunter Biden's company has actually invested in Chinese technology companies. And so Joe Biden can squirm and he can try to get away from this, but he's going to have to be held accountable, and he will be held accountable. And I would hope that Bernie Sanders, particularly Bernie Sanders, had a chance to do this to Hillary Clinton and failed miserably in the primary in 2016. Given another shot, he would hold a globalist like Joe Biden accountable to this. But for Joe Biden to say last week, in the intense white heat nature of this firestorm we have going between Chinese officials and President Trump and the administration on this trade deal, which is really at the heart of this economic war, for Biden to sit there in Iowa and say, "Hey, they're not a competitor to us," right? It shows you how clueless Biden is, and maybe even something more serious, and maybe something that his interests are aligned with China and the members of the CCP because of his financial interests.
So, Steve, basically the question becomes: is Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden, clueless or compromised when it comes to China? Right.
Well, I think we have to first off, let's go back and look at, Joe Biden went to Pittsburgh and Joe Biden went to Iowa. Joe Biden sitting there saying, trying to tell Trump voters, I'm really the real deal. Donald Trump's a phony. Joe Biden was there for all 8 years of the Obama administration, and that all they did was surrender. All they did was surrender every day to China. They allowed the manufacturing jobs to be shipped overseas. Joe Biden was there for every day of it. Joe Biden didn't do anything when China built these islands in the South China Sea, which is one of the most provocative things that have happened in global affairs in the last 15 or 20 years. These are essentially aircraft carriers that the Chinese are going to use to restrict trade and navigation of the South China Sea, which I think takes over $5 trillion of world trade goes through there today. And it's absolutely essential for our allies in South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan to have free navigation of the South China Sea to make sure that they're free. Joe Biden was there with Obama. When they looked the other way, I believe that the building of those islands was and the cratering of America showed Asia that was the Munich. That was our Munich of the 21st century. Biden was there for that. Biden was there when Xi came to the Rose Garden in 2014 and signed a deal with Obama in front of the American people and said, we're not going to do any more cyber theft, no more cyber intrusions. And all the Chinese did after that was double down and triple down. So you can see with what President Trump's had to go through with the last 48 hours, and that was basically to tell the Chinese, you're not going to renegotiate us. This deal is going to be a real deal, and we're going to go public with exactly what you've been doing, and you're going to agree to not do it again. And we're going to have a legal contract that shows you're not going to do it again. We're going to have tariffs as a hammer to make sure you don't do it again. And we're not only going to let the world know that in this deal, the Chinese people are going to know that. One of the things that the Chinese Communist Party is trying to stop is having a full promulgation of this deal out into the local and regional authorities in China. And we're trying to do that to make sure what Trump's doing is trying to have some teeth in this deal, so it's just not happy talk. All Biden is, he's one of these glad handers. It's nothing but happy talk. He hasn't done anything for working class people. And if he's done it, he's got a point to his time in the Obama administration of what he did on trade. It was President Trump that put the tariffs in to start bringing steel jobs back, aluminum jobs back. It's President Trump that did the 301 that started focusing on forced technology transfers and technology theft, where the Chinese are ripping off American companies. That's Donald Trump. Joe Biden was there for 8 years, did absolutely nothing except take $1.5 billion from the Chinese Communist Party. And that's how his son makes a living. We got to find out how. Look, I would hate to say that Biden's compromised. He's certainly clueless and incompetent. But we've got to drill down and get the facts of what his involvement, what his family's involvement financially is with the Chinese Communist parties and what companies they finance in China.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, the former campaign chairman of the Trump for President campaign, engineering the victory in the fall. He was a White House chief strategist for the president in 2017, some of 18, and he's now the head of a C4 called Citizens for the American Republic, and you want to follow them at Twitter at CitizensAR. Steve Bannon, speaking of China, the president shockingly yesterday, or I guess Saturday, last 48 hours, saying, look, I've been negotiating in good faith, all of our people have with the Chinese. I've had enough. We're making no progress. Stall tactics, lies, same old thing. I'm conjecturing that. But he said, hey, I'm going to go back to the 25% tariffs on another $200 billion of Chinese goods because I just want to get progress. What did you think of that?
But listen, let's go back to the economic data, and I think where these two parties stand. If you look at the 3.2% growth that was announced, last Friday a week ago, the 1% that was over the 2.2 that nobody guessed came from us decreasing the trade deficit with China, and also part of the great jobs number. What this is showing is we're starting to bring jobs back. People are starting to look at alternatives to Chinese goods. This is the heart of the Trump economic program. Trump's strategy is working, and Wall Street hates it. Okay, Wall Street hates it because it's cutting off their. Remember, Wall Street's the investor relations department for the Chinese, for the CCP. So Wall Street's always been against Trump in this matter. And this is why President Trump, I think, feels now, as I see it, that his economic program is working, and he's not about to break to the Chinese. He's going to have a real deal. The key line in those two tweets is we're not going to allow, we're not going to be renegotiated. Donald Trump is not going to get retraded. And I think the key to the retrades are these huge issues about subsidies to state-owned industries, subsidies to advanced manufacturing that they're trying to do, forced technology transfers, everything that talks about the advanced manufacturing that will drive the American economy and the world economy in the 21st century. Donald Trump is fighting for you and your kids right now, okay? And that's why this thing is the most important thing we're working on. And this is the most important thing that the Trump administration has been working on. And it's why this Russia hoax is such a joke, right? This is the heart of what the great economic war of the 21st century is, and this is what Trump is focused on every day. And he also said, we're going to have a deal that has teeth, and you're going to abide by it. And what the Chinese are trying to do is their old trick, not to get the word out, not to let people know what these deals really are. And what Trump's trying to do is force it past the Chinese Communist Party to make sure this is promulgated legislatively in China down to the local and regional level so the Chinese people can understand what the regime at the CCP in Beijing has been trying to do. Because the Chinese people essentially are our allies in this. Remember, we have a world right now that's a house divided, half slave and half free. It's the Chinese people that have been enslaved by this radical cadre of the CCP. That's what President Trump is trying to break, is their continual lies and misrepresentations to their own people and also to businesses in the financial community and people in the United States. This is the heart of the return of American greatness. This is why Wall Street and the corporatists have fought him tooth and nail. You see from the numbers it's working, and I think that tweet yesterday was monumental. I think it's one of the most powerful things he's done in his presidency. And he said, "Hey, if we don't have a deal, that's a deal on my terms, right? We're gonna hit you with across the board dramatic increases in tariffs. Now, the Chinese, and particularly the hawks in China, are sitting there going, hey, our system is working fine for us right now. Why do we need the Americans? Let's call their bluff. Let's call Trump's bluff. And so this thing is going to get very nasty and very contentious over the next couple of weeks.
If the Chinese call their bluff, what happens, Steve?
Well, I think that the Chinese, they're going to see their economy right now is down from historic highs to, it's publicly reported. They put phony numbers out, say 6.9% growth. I think most people think, if you talk to sophisticated people that follow it, to be anywhere from 1.9 to 3.5% growth. This, as the papers say today, could knock off if Trump increases these tariffs. That could cut that growth in half. I mean, to a large extent, they are struggling. What people around at the hardcore level of the CCP around Xi look at this One Belt, One Road conference they had last week, where 70 nations showed up to basically take money from the Chinese in this One Belt, One Road, which is this project they try to unite the Eurasian landmass. So the Chinese, by printing a lot of printing a lot of RMB, feel that they've got a system right now that can at least work in the short term. And so they don't want to change, and they particularly can't change when it comes to forced technology transfers. They do not have the innovation right now of Silicon Valley. So they have to basically steal or force that innovation from Japan and the United States and Western Europe into their system. And Trump's program stops that. Trump's program also stops the subsidies these big state-owned industries. That's why you have China is great at exporting deflation and overcapacity. That's why in Japan, the United States, and Europe, you have a very tough time raising prices. You have a very tough time getting wages increase. And the reason is China has so much overcapacity and continues to pound state money into that gives them a very unfair comparative advantage. That's also what Trump's trying to stop in this deal. I mean, this deal is a highly negotiated. Bob Lighthizer, our ambassador, head of U.S. Trade Representatives, one of the best deal lawyers around. He's really Trump's wingman on this, and he's done a terrific job. But now you're down to the nitty gritty, and the Chinese, as they always do, are trying to retrade. And you finally have a president of the United States, unlike Biden and unlike Obama, and unlike Bush. Right? This is just not Democrats. Mm-hmm. This has been the Republicans, been Clinton, Bush, and the Obama factions have all basically kowtowed to China. Donald Trump is the first guy to stand up, and he stood up for a reason. He realizes this is why he's president of the United States, is the American people rejected this managed decline by the American elites, and this is why Trump's president. He understands this is central to his presidency and also for the good of the nation.
We're with Steve Bannon. Steve is now the head of a C4, Citizens for the American Republic. You can check them out on the web. You can also follow them on Twitter at CitizensAR. Steve Bannon, so the Chinese reacting in shock to this, I would suppose, because they're accustomed to rolling every other U.S. president, I guess, since Richard Nixon went over there. They always get what they want. They stole, they lie, they cheat, they steal, and we eventually don't do anything. It's been reported that the Chinese involved in these negotiations were shocked at the president's tweet over the weekend. True or false?
100%. I think that they looked at that they were going to try to change some of the terms of this. One of the things they wanted to do was to have all the tariffs go away upon signing. And Trump has said from day one, tariffs are staying. Not only are tariffs going to stay, we're going to reduce them, but tariffs are going to stay. And if you do not comply with the deal, the tariffs are going to increase. What they wanted was all the tariffs to go away immediately. And Trump said that's a retrade. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. The other thing is about the promulgation of this information. The Chinese tried to retrade. You don't retrade Donald Trump. He's a master deal maker. Mm-hmm. You don't retrade him. So he's sitting there going, and that key line, they try to renegotiate. This is not going to happen. It's dragged on too long, and I'm not going to be tapped along by the Chinese Communist Party. This is what they do to every other president. It's not going to happen to me. And, hey, I'm putting you on notice. On Friday, he said, hey, on Friday, I'm increasing those tariffs to 25% across a broader range of product. And, in China, they had shock because no one's ever stood up to him before.
And what's amazing, too, is he also gave a short deadline on Friday, which shocked everybody. Normally, you'd get one of these, you would think he would tweet out and say, in the near future. I mean, he gave a deadline of Friday, and when this president gives a deadline, it's a real deadline, Steve Bannon, no question. Look, I want to get, I've only got a couple of minutes. You've got to take off. I want to get to The Barr testimony, now Robert Mueller, the president saying he shouldn't testify. Attorney General Barr saying the other day, look, if he wants to testify, fine, I'm fine with it. How do you stand on that?
Look, the president waived executive privilege. I was one of the guys that went up there. He told us you had to give over all your documents, all your devices, unlimited testimony, hours and hours and hours and hours for his whole staff. The president was more than any other president of the United States, waived executive privilege and sent everybody up there, totally complied with everybody. This thing is nonsense. And we have situations like Venezuela, Iran, you've got the Chinese negotiation, you have North Korea, you've got entire globe, right, that is in some form of meltdown. We're going through a dark valley like the 1930s. And to continue on this madness of the Russia hoax, they came out, there's no collusion, there's no obstruction. It's time to move on. And the Democrats on the show, the series. Last night, Chuck Schumer, to his benefit, put out a great tweet supporting President Trump on China. He said, hang tough. Don't fold on the Chinese. I hope he tells that to Joe Biden. But I tell you, see, some Democrats, I think, are focused on what's important. It's time that, look, you've had enough of this Russia hoax. It's time to get serious. We're living in a very dangerous world. We're living in a world that America's free market capitalism can lead us to global prosperity. But people have to get focused. Russia is a sideshow. It's got an economy the size of New York State. It's in a demographic death spiral, right? It produces no advanced technology, just natural resources. They're dangerous people. We've got a lot of weapons, and they're bad guys. But we deal with bad guys, got a lot of weapons all the time, okay? The central heart of what's going on is China, and Donald Trump's focus on that. All this other nonsense, who's going to testify and who's not going to testify, Trump summed it up, I think, pretty well. Grow up and move on.
Grow up and move on. And that is going to be the final word. Steve Bannon is out of time. I want to thank Steve. Steve, always an honor to have you on. We need to get you on more. I know you've been out of the U.S. for a while. Hey, follow Bannon, his new CR, Citizens for the American Republic, at Citizens AR. Follow them on Twitter. Steve, thanks for being with us. I really appreciate that insight.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on.